Many of us in the Pacific Northwest have noticed through the last 3 or 4 decades that the overpopulation of seals and sea lions, otherwise known as pinnipeds, has gotten to levels that are just decimating our fisheries. Sports fishing, native food fishing, commercial fishermen, they all speak about what you see here. How the seals and sea lions are going up our rivers and decimating our salmon populations, tearing them from our hooks and our nets, causing thousands of dollars of damage. So a group of us got together and we started the Pacific Balance Marine Management. It's a group of British Columbia First Nations, 8 of us, that have support from many people from every fishing sector and people that are just concerned about what's going on with our salmon and our other finfish stocks. And what we want to do is see the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans in British Columbia, otherwise known as DFO, to allow the First Nations first to be able to sell the sea lions and the seals that we harvest in our food social ceremonial harvesting so that we can generate some revenue. It'll also give an incentive to more First Nations to kick up their harvesting of seals and sea lions that we have done for thousands of years. Now, we all know about the environmentalists and how they always are the ones that, with their millions of dollars of funding coming in through donations and sponsorships and government support, they're advocating protect this, protect that, and God forbid, don't harvest the seals and sea lions. So if we look at Dr. David Suzuki here, his quote, "First Nations have cared for the coast for thousands of years. Let's follow their lead." Now if we go back to the cover of our marine management plan that we submitted to the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans Minister of Fisheries, it's exactly what it states. Indigenous commercial harvesting of pinnipeds in British Columbia, applying indigenous ecology for management and economic opportunity. For thousands of years, from the Baja through to the Bering Sea, the indigenous people of the coast were harvesting seals and sea lions, and we kept that animal kingdom in balance. And in doing so, the seals and sea lions weren't going up our rivers because we had fish weirs and fish traps protecting them like gates, so only the salmon could get upstream at night when we opened the weirs up. But in the daytime, we could trap the fish and catch them. But day and night, those fish weirs stopped the seals and sea lions from going upriver. And of course, a few years ago, we heard about this young girl torn from the dock in Steveston in the Fraser River in Vancouver area. And of course, there was a little bit of an uproar. But I firmly believe, and I'm going to be brash with this, if she was a Caucasian young girl with blonde hair and blue eyes and light-colored skin, I'm sure there would have been a greater uproar to what that sea lion did when it tore into the murky, dark depths of the Fraser River. And that's just an indicator that there's too many seals and sea lions. But if we look at this sea lion, that's a California sea lion. They're not indigenous to British Columbia waters nor Puget Sound. There's no archaeological evidence showing California sea lion bones in any of the digs. There's no oral indigenous history, languages that have the term for California sea lion. So it's showing you they're not indigenous from here. And you, the sports fishermen, you know all too well what's happening. You remember out in the waters of the Sailor Sea, which is otherwise known as the Gulf of Georgia, down in the Puget Sound, off the west coast of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, southeast Alaska. Remember when we used to see, up until the mid-80s, thousands of coho finning. We were able to catch Chinook, king salmon, smileys, tai, what they're called. And we had huge limits for sports fishing. Commercial fishing, we used to catch them and release them after a few years to protect them. And we've been doing this for decades. So it's not the commercial fishermen are decimating the Chinook and the coho because we haven't been able to retain them. And it's surely not sports fishermen because there's not enough of them. But look at this picture of this commercial herring seine boat. This is what's going on out there. Hundreds, over 1,000 sea lions, Steller in California, hammering your nets. And you think about 30 to 80 pounds is what a sea lion, depending on their size and species and type, will consume. Well, if you do the math of 47,000 sea lions in British Columbia, 110 seals eating 5 to 8 pounds of fish per day, you do the math times 365 days a year, times 10 or 15 years, which is the life expectancy of a pinniped, well, they're eating more than the commercial fishermen. The Salish Sea around Bowen Island, just north of Vancouver, Dr. Carl Walters and others that are scientists for the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans have recognized that there's homesteader herring stocks that are now extinct because of seal predation. Inside a seal stomach, these are capelin from the East Coast, but there's over 30 in that seal stomach. You can just imagine if those are juvenile salmon or herring or ooligans, and 110,000 seals just in British Columbia, not including Washington and Oregon. There's millions of our fish, and they know it, being eaten by seals and sea lions. Of course, those that are pinniped huggers, they're always saying, oh, they're so cute. They're round eye whisker faces. They mean no harm. Well, what happened to the revenue that dock used to generate in moorage? The ramps have been pulled, the boats are gone, and now it's just a rookery for sea lions. That's an indicator throughout the entire Pacific Northwest that things are not right. Everywhere you go, you see seal heads up. And year-round, you see them harvesting different finfish. We are being devastated. The salmon stocks, the herring stocks, ooligan, are being devastated by the overpopulations of seals and sea lions. They are eating the salmon and other finfish to extinction. The California sea lions, as I stated, they're not indigenous to British Columbia waters, and I firmly believe that 100% of them should be removed. We remove other invasive species. Why would we not do that to the invasive California sea lion? The sturgeon that are in our rivers, the Fraser River especially, they're soon to be in the endangered species list if they not already are. But surely a day is going to come soon that they will be on the extinct species list because of the decimation to their stocks from the seals and sea lions in the rivers. Seals up rivers so far on Vancouver Island, they're in Nimkish and Wass Lakes. They're also in the lakes in other inlets and other places of coastal British Columbia. We know of Horace and his buddies, the California sea lions, that made the Lake Washington, Steelhead, and sockeye runs extinct, and that was in the mid to late 80s. And now every river in British Columbia has the plague of overpopulation of seals and sea lions decimating our salmon. Even right at the gates of hatcheries, the pinnipeds are harvesting our salmon that are going there to spawn. First Nations traditional harvest? Yes, it's been like that for thousands of years. Up in northern British Columbia, in the Nass, Skeena River areas, the First Nations up there still harvest over 110 Steller sea lions a year. They also harvest seals. All the way down to about the central part of British Columbia, that's the norm for some of those communities that are out there of indigenous peoples. But south of Cape Caution in southern British Columbia and in Washington State and Oregon, Northern California, we indigenous, we harvest our food like anyone else with a credit card, cash, wrapped in plastic from a grocery store or a drive-through, or delivered with some person to our door now because of a pandemic. Well, we need to get licensed so we can sell the seals and sea lions. And we have markets for every part of them. And that'll give the incentive, excuse me, to my fellow First Nations and North American Indians to get out there during winter prime and harvest the seals and sea lions for the hides, the meat, the blubber, the bones, the whiskers, you name it. Every part of them can be used. And of course, what better organic meat from the ocean could we not feed to our people once again like we did for thousands of years? Because Lord knows, diabetes is epidemic in the British Columbia and Canadian Indigenous peoples. And legacy, teaching our youth so that they too can go out and get their first sea lion like this young lad did. I think he was 6 years old, and 2020 he got another couple more sea lions and some seals. So this is what we need to do. Redevelop what kept us going for thousands of years, but we need your support as non-natives. We especially need the silence of the pinniped huggers, the ones against it. If that's not for your liking or choosing, then don't support it. We don't ask for your support, but we do ask for your respect and your silence not to interfere with the traditional ways of the indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. Foods that our people have eaten by smoking it, nowadays they smoke and jar it, freeze it, all kinds of ways that I've personally eaten it myself, and we need to do more of this. But there's also the markets that are out there for restaurants and for other people in the world. So you can have canned seal, you can have canned sea lion, fresh seal. You can go to the east coast of Canada and jump on a ferry and go to one of the islands, and the menus have a diverse selection of seal meat that you can eat, even flipper pie. So as I stated, our salmon and other finfish are being eaten to extinction, and we need to change that by redeveloping the fur industry with seals and sea lions, even sea otter. Fur Canada and Nanaimo that I work with, we have developed training programs in-house and also to bring to coastal communities to teach them how to make garments and accessories for furniture and furnishings in a house, gun cases, rod cases, seat covers for boats. The list goes on, that there's so much things that can be produced by having these training courses that we've already started conducting just at the beginning of COVID. And of course that's holding us up, but there's no need for us to stop the process so that we can get people to learn how to manufacture these beautiful garments. Can you imagine motorcycle riders with chaps that are made out of Steller sea lion or California sea lion or seal like this? Semi-waterproof, very fashionable, and it's something people have used since the dawn of our creations, and it's only recently that the people that are against it have chosen to socio-economically and culturally suppress the indigenous people of North America by saying Europe and other places don't buy fur garments because it's wrong. Well, it's more wrong to see the indigenous communities that would make things from fur and sell it. Now they've lost a livelihood, a means to buy food for their family, and in turn they be riddled with poverty. They become depressed. Our alcohol rates go up. Our death by alcohol and drug addiction and suicide go up. Canadian Indigenous people's rates for all of that are far higher than the standard norm. So how do we get around it? Well, this piece here called a headpiece, those are sea lion whiskers on top. And up north, apparently, the Inuit, they went to the government and said, we harvest seals for meat and blubber. The hide is a byproduct. Well, here in British Columbia, we First Nations need to write those letters, those Band Council resolutions, and get it off to fisheries to tell them that we want to harvest seals and sea lions for their whiskers, for our regalia, our native art that we sell. And in turn, the hides, the blubber, the meat will be a byproduct. So we need license to sell that. That's called a loophole. That's what the government's been using against us Indians since they first came here. And it's now our turn to turn it right back and use that loophole. Because this picture shows how out of balance nature is. That's a fellow commercial salmon or herring seine fisherman and salmon fisherman. But that sea lion grabbed him by the buttock and almost tore him from the deck of his boat. Fortunately, he was hanging on to something. That's the only thing that saved his life. And there's numerous other humans that have been bit by seals and sea lions. Ian McAllister, standing with me in Bella Bella, the captain, the king of let's save the grizzly bears and the wolves and stop hunting them. Now nature's out of balance all through coastal British Columbia because no one's harvesting grizzly bears, wolves, and black bears, and that ecosystem is going out of balance because of protectionism. So we First Nations, we have the power to approach our chief and council and ask for a Band Council resolution to ban the environmentalist leaders and their people from our traditional territories. So long as that Band Council resolution is signed by chief and dated, may not get them out of the territories, but it'll send a message to the world that we First Nations want to start changing the ways that most people are accustomed to. They believe us Indians hug everything and want to stop all industry, and that's far from the truth. To you American citizens south of British Columbia waters, know that your fish have tails and they swim into BC as young. Some of them rear in BC waters, and a lot of them come through BC waters to come spawn in Washington State, Oregon, and Northern California. Well, we need your help as well, because your fish are being consumed by our overpopulations of seals and sea lions. Here's a vest. We started the GoFundMe program, and that GoFundMe program, and when we reach the halfway mark of $25,000, I will be keeping track by email. Anyone who donates, please email me. It's in all the posts in Pacific Balance Marine Management, and one person will be drawn to win a nice vest like this made by Fur Canada. The cost is $600 to $900. So remember, Pacific Balance Marine Management. Harvest the herds. We're on Facebook. Please join the group to learn more. It's all about getting balance. We don't want to shoot 100% of the seals and sea lions. We just want to take out a percentage that the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans has set for us. And that's what it's all about. Balance. So don't forget, if you go to Seal and Sea Lions Management Training on GoFundMe, you can donate. It's about almost a week now we've raised $450. How come the anti-people can raise 100,000 times that amount in a few weeks? Yet here we are struggling. People, if you don't want to see the salmon and other finfish eaten to extinction, it is a time to put away your indifferences about us Indigenous people and start helping us. Yes, our group is helping First Nations called bands or tribes get their funding that they can access for economic development. But we as a group of volunteers working almost 3 years now, I have over 17,000 invested in this campaign to protect our salmon. It would be nice if we could have a few dollars come in so that we can hold training courses, get hides tanned to create incentive for young people to go out and harvest and others, and maybe even buy some garments that are made from the seal and sea lion hides so that we can have further draws to generate more donations, to develop more incentive. So I'm reaching out to all of you. Please help us. Pacific Balance Marine Management on Facebook. Please go to it. Please help with our campaign to generate some funds through GoFundMe. I heard from hundreds that said, why don't you start a GoFundMe program? Well, we have, and we only have $450 so far. Come on, people, kick it up. You commercial fish companies, donate, put your name on there, and challenge the other companies. You sports fishing resorts, you sports fishing store owners, you sports fishing guides, put your name up there to show that you're supporting and challenge the people in your fishery sector. And you commercial fishing companies, what the hell's wrong with you? Get on the email and phone and give us a call and start helping this cause. Otherwise, there is no commercial fishing in British Columbia anymore. Sorry for being so emotional, but I'm getting a bit long in the tooth with this campaign, and I have found that by being a commercial fisherman, say it the way you mean it and mean what you say, that's when the people on deck take notice of what's going on. So there you go, people. I thank you guys very much for your support. I love all your comments. You give me so much wind in my sails to carry on with this campaign. But now we just ask for a little bit of your financial help. $10, $20, it'll go a long way. Thank you very much. And from me and my fellow directors on Pacific Balance Marine Management, have a good day, and let's do what we can to protect our salmon and other finfish people. Goodbye.